I wonder sometimes when we look back how history will look at us. You know what really frustrates me about this whole China, Canada, US situation? It's not the people that are actively gaslighting the rest of us into believing that this is just trade. It is not. I'll show you the receipts later. But what really worries me is this message that is being sent while they're doing this. The subtle messaging, the idea that China is just as bad as the US, or the US is just as bad as China. They're equally flawed, they're equally dangerous, they're equally evil. Hello everyone, my name is Lu. I was born and raised in authoritarian China, and I'm a Chinese immigrant in Canada. I'll be honest with you, this video is probably gonna be a little bit all over the place because, well, it's an emotional video for me, and a lot has happened. And if you can't remember anything that I'm about to say in this video, please remember this. A flawed democracy, even with all its chaos, all its hypocrisy, is still 10 times, 100 times, infinitely better than authoritarian control. And I know this is a strange, original concept for a lot of people to grasp because they've never lived under a full-on authoritarian regime ever. But we must not treat China as if it was any other country, because it is a country that is fundamentally different from us.
All criticisms people may have of democracies or even corporatocracies, they are generally not going to engage in the type of irrational behavior that a dictatorship can have driven by one person. It's irrational for China to start a world war. They don't actually want to, but you have to remember that that presumes a set of Western norms.
We assume they're rational actors to begin with. And I agree.
And we also assume that people value the same things that we do.
Right.
The reality is China does not value life as highly. And there's people who think I'm being some kind
in
of...
Russia right now.
We see it in Russia throwing away lives, and people say, Palmer, how can you say that they care about our people just like we do? I say, no, they clearly do not. The political calculus is different. If in the United States we were losing 7,000 men a week, it would be the political end of any politician who supported that for even 1 week.
Overnight.
It's because as a culture, they value life not nearly so highly as the United States. Same thing in China. You can look at this in insurance payouts. You can look at how they handle injury and disability. You can look at how they handle factory safety. They value economic factors over life and certainly over liberty.
You know what's really interesting about this? By the way, everything he said is true. Culturally, human lives, your well-being, is lower on the hierarchy. I do want to emphasize here, this does not mean that Chinese people or Russians are inferior or anything like that. It's just that, you live in this authoritarian regimes with all the brainwashing education from a very early age. You learn how to not respect individuality. You learn how to not respect freedom as much as, people in the West would. It's not that we completely don't care about human lives. It's just where we draw the line. I think for a lot of people in democracies, you draw the line very early. I remember I was watching an interview with people in Taiwan. She was explaining, what do you think was the biggest difference between Chinese people and Taiwanese people? And she said something that truly kind of shocked me a little. She said Chinese people, when they talk about reunification of Taiwan, they don't care about losing their lives. They would do everything they can to invade Taiwan. They think that's justice because it's so important for them. But if you ask a Taiwanese person, they'll likely be like, oh, if there's a war, I'm out, I'm leaving. A lot of Chinese people, they're willing to die so easily. Human lives is just not as important.
The thing people don't realize is if you've got someone who doesn't really value life nearly so highly, I don't think that she values economic productivity as the end. It's a means to an end, which is the reunification of China for the first time in 3,000 years.
He understands.
That's a mentality people can't grasp. Why would he start a war? That would destroy his economy. It will reduce a component of his economy for a time, but he doesn't care.
For historical reasons.
Correct.
It would put him in history books.
He is not worried about a few years of problems. It's just a very different value system, and people have not.
I've talked a little bit about this in my previous videos about how when you grow up in an authoritarian regime, the information that you get is highly controlled. From my grandparents' generation, the information you get is that communism is great. Chairman Mao is the greatest leader of all time. Over time, their propaganda strategy has transformed into something that's a lot more powerful and a lot more sophisticated. Maybe your life is not great, but the grass is not greener on the other side. If you turn on Chinese state-controlled TV channels, and that's all you can get in China without breaking the law, you see how bad the West is doing. I didn't realize until very recently that the West is going through something very similar. China has done a great job at waging this misinformation war, right? They own TikTok, they own their own media companies. Everything is highly controlled. So, your average citizen, when they go on their phones, what do they see about China? They see how fast the trains are going. So they think China is great. But when you scroll on, the New York Times, Washington Post, Globe and Mail, all these media outlets in the West, what do you see about your own country? We know by nature news is disaster centered, right? It's not like reporters go out and report on how great our nation is doing. That is not what their job is, right? TikTok right now remains the biggest platform for the younger generation and for millennials, for everybody really. I think a lot of people get this warped view, this illusion that China is great. At least a lot of people are doubting whether China is really as bad as it is portrayed in traditional media, which is by all means dying. I'll give you an example. A lot of people heard about Donald Trump's plan on Greenland, but how many of you have heard about what China has been doing in Greenland? Can you name one thing that China has been doing in Greenland? Like, how many of you know that there has been a military purge within the Chinese Communist Party? How many of you understand the real reason behind it? It is so mysterious, and on the surface everything looks fine, but you don't see the chaos. Like, if there is a protest, and by the way, there has been protest going on right now in China, the police officers arrive at the scene within 5 minutes, and they will be checking, and I know this for a fact because it happened to me too, they will be checking everybody's phone on the spot, making sure that nobody is, doing something bad, like recording what really happened. So protest, chaos, those things never get the light of day. It used to be just inside China. Now it's a global illusion of what a real China is. And that is scary.
And it's with this approach that Canada is forging a new strategic partnership with China. Third, our commitment to multilateralism and strengthening global governance comes at a time when all of this is in flux. China's strengths in electric vehicle sector are undeniable. China produces some of the most affordable and efficient energy efficient vehicles in the world.
China produces one of the most affordable EVs. I wonder why they're so cheap. It's because the Chinese Communist Party, which by the way stole the money from the Chinese people, is footing the bills. You think we're just gonna let you have the good deal and make it so cheap for you? Oh no, there is a hidden cost for this deal. They're buying the information, right? Hence a lot of people, national security experts, say that this is a risk.
Both Canada and China are strong advocates of multilateralism. China will be the host of APEC this year, and Canada stands ready to support their agenda, focused on strengthening and reinvigorating the multilateral system. Canada appreciates China's support for our bid to host the APEC's Leaders Summit in 2029. The fourth pillar of our new strategic partnership is public safety and security. People have always been at the core of this relationship. Canada is home to a Chinese diaspora of 2 million. Over 300,000 Chinese visitors came to Canada in 2024. China is Canada's 7th largest source of tourism.
The audacity for him to bring the diaspora into this conversation. It is no secret that the Chinese Communist Party hunts down dissidents globally, especially in Canada. In making this deal, he is throwing us, the diaspora, the safety of our life in Canada under the bus without sufficient guardrails, without an effective foreign transparency registry, without really anything. Canada does not have an effective foreign transparency registry. The penalty for violating that act under this registry is literally 50 Canadian dollars. I mean, I think that's really funny. I don't know anybody who would actually comply given that they needed to pay $50. I live in Canada. I'm a Canadian citizen. I do not feel safe starting this channel. Before I started this channel, I knew very well the risk of speaking against China, living in Canada. Why do I feel that way when I live in Canada? Is it because I want more people-to-people ties? Would that make me safer? I don't think so.
Fifth pillar of this partnership will build on opportunities for cultural exchanges and partnerships that further deepen our people-to-people ties.
For those of you who believe till this day somehow there is something good that might come out of this more engagement with China because they need to soothe their conscience while doing trade with a country that has serious human rights issues, they want to lie to themselves and believe that this might be for a better China. Please wake up and please stop telling this illusion to other people. China is never going to change because it has more engagement with you. And just think about this. Who do you think has more leverage here? Do you think a middle power like Canada is somehow better positioned to change how an authoritarian system behaves? Or do you think the Chinese Communist Party, which excels at cultural and political interference, do you think they would have a better chance at using this deepened engagement to their advantage? Who do you think is having the winning hand right now? I hope I don't have to convince you, because history, years of evidence has shown us China is much better at this than we are.
I didn't think they would go quite that far. This deal is not just about tariffs. It's a strategic trade-off with long-term implications because China didn't just suddenly become more reasonable. It's a reaction to the world situation, and what it demonstrates to the Chinese Communist Party is pressure worked, and Beijing will remember that.
Yeah, what precedent ultimately could that set?
Let's look at it this way. What did Canada gain from this? Canadian farmers got real short-term relief, especially on canola. That's great. Those tariffs were painful and politically targeted, but the relief is time-limited and reversible, right? Beijing kept the leverage. What did Canada give up? Canada broke ranks with the US on Chinese electric vehicles. Even with quotas, the signal's big. Market access is negotiable under pressure. And that teaches the Chinese Communist Party that pressure works, and it's likely to test that again. As for how Beijing sees this, the CCP is going to see that Canada is flexible under economic pain. Strategic partnership here isn't just about trying to build trust. In fact, it's mostly not about that. It's about training expectations. And this is China saying, this is how problems get solved. You accommodate, we reward.
I don't know about you, but that sounds like they're training a dog.
That's really challenging. It has huge implications for Canada's industrial policy.
Does it make things trickier with the United States?
Absolutely. It's a very serious challenge with the United States, right? I'm a big advocate that Canada needs to diversify trading partners and do things differently. But Canada cannot trade its way out of its security dependence on the United States. And replacing U.S. dependence with China dependence would be worse, not better, in so many ways.
I wonder sometimes when we look back how history will look at us. The UK has already learned from Canada in all the worst ways possible and went to China and try to start this new age of trading with China and building a relationship with China. And I wonder how history would judge Canada as a country. What did we just start here? What did we just do?
The risk is not just Trump's reaction, it's also a structural risk. Canada's economy is deeply integrated with the United States, especially the auto sector. Rob Ford, every automaker in Canada has talked about this. Any perception that Canada is weakening allied coordination with China is likely to create downstream costs for the broader Canada-US relationship, right? And so it's a real risk, also long-term economically. My understanding of the United States situation is it's likely to revert back to being more engageable for Canada in the future. Give it time. Economically, China is not going to generate a more sustainable trade balance with Western countries. Its trajectory is inherently imbalanced. It's not going to get better.
Why is that the case?
It has to do with the structure of the Chinese economy. It calls itself a socialism with Chinese characteristics, but it's not even remotely socialist. Meanwhile, its property sector is in the tank, and many other aspects of the Chinese economy are badly stagnating and are heading into a Japan-style lost decade. So they have so many economic problems, and they're effectively exporting them to Canada and other countries.
I just want to add that a lot of middle powers, I mean, Australia is a lot better at this than Canada, admittedly. Canada has a brain drain when it comes to China issues. I've had so many people coming to me in Canada talking about how they're discouraged starting a career in this China sphere, I guess, because they know there is very little prospect professionally here in Canada. And that is why Canada as a country struggled to come up with the Indo-Pacific plan, because there's simply not a lot of people who understand China. We just need to have more people who understand China's economy and how bad it is right now. And if we didn't have that brain drain, if we had more people who understand China more, we wouldn't be making that huge mistake right now.
At many points in advance during this trip, the federal government's framing around it has been one of economic pragmatism and necessity vis-a-vis the trade treatment of us by the United States. But there were moments during the trip where the Prime Minister appeared to take things further, including during meetings with the President and other top officials in China, where he even surmised about a new world order. And that certainly caught the attention of some people in the US, but also many people in Canada. What did you make of that?
I thought that was a very worrisome way to express things, frankly. Look, the optics could have been better. And, talking about a refreshed strategic partnership while intoning about a new world order while you're sitting in a meeting room with the Chinese Communist Party really carries some Orwellian overtones. Mark Carney in general seems to be following the Australian playbook of emphasizing trade and business and not talking about security. That can work for a while, but only if you still quietly take increasingly robust measures to defend your country, and you can't stay silent forever because that undermines confidence of allies, and it doesn't let the Canadian public understand the real risks that they're being drawn into with these kind of arrangements.
I'll leave it on that note.